Hi, I'm Barbara Persing from 4th and 6th Designs, and today's video is about raw edge applique done on the long arm. The quilt I'm going to demonstrate on for today is Full Bloom, which is our newest applique quilt. So I hope you enjoy the video. What I'm going to be demonstrating is two different types. The first will be a block that has been appliqued down, and all I will be doing is actually the quilting. The second block, I will be doing the applique and the quilting all at the same time. When doing edge coloring applique, you always want to match the color of your thread to the color of your fabric. We also like to use Aurifil 40 weight for our edge coloring as well as for the quilting. And these are the threads that we'll be demonstrating on this quilt today. Okay, so this is the first block that we're going to do. You notice I have a yellow thread that matches this top yellow fabric, and I also have the same exact color thread in my bobbin. This block here is a block that has been glued only. There's no top stitching, no applique work done. So I'm going to applique and quilt all at the same time. Pull my bobbin thread up. I'm going to take 5 or 6 small stitches to knot my thread. And keeping my needle along the edge, I'm going to do the same exact type of edge coloring that Mary does with the domestic, only this is the long arm. I'm going to move the same way in small areas, covering the edge. And you want to come in a little bit because this quilt will probably get washed at some point, and you want it to be as secure as any other type of applique. Because I'm quilting at the same time, I'm also going to give all of my petal definitions at this time as well. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit and you'll see exactly where I'm at when I'm doing this edge coloring. And I can be as messy or as neat as I want. There is no such thing as too messy with this process. I can go back if I felt I didn't cover something enough, and then continue right along. And again, I'm doing my applique and my quilting at the same time. So you can see now I've finished going around all of my light yellow petals, and again I'm going to go through the same procedure of knotting my thread to pull my bobbin thread up and clip my threads. I'm going to move the machine away, pick up my top thread, do one stitch, move the machine away. This is now my bobbin thread and my top thread, and I will clip them both tight because I've already done my 6 small individual stitches, so that thread is now knotted off nicely. Now this flower has 2 different fabrics to make it up. It's a double flower. You have the dotted fabric and then the all yellow fabric. So because this is 2 different fabrics, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change my thread, and my next thread color is a little bit more of an orange yellow, and we're going to use that to stitch the back petals down, and I'll show you how to hop around to get to all your little edges. Okay, so you can see that I've now changed my thread. I have a slightly more orange tone thread, and we're going to use this on what we would consider to be the back petals. We're going to move around this whole flower without having to stop and break our thread. Because you can see here when I was using the light yellow thread, I hopped right over the top of that petal to get to the next petal. Now we're going to cover that with some dark orange thread, and I'm going to show you how we move around. So again, I'm going to start here, drop my needle, move away. I am now holding my bobbin and my top thread. I'll do 5 or 6 stitches. That's my knotting process, and now I'm going to begin appliquing and quilting. So now I've done the edge of this piece. I'm going to come down into the center. I'm going to move along that purple center and up to my top. Now remember, these petals are meant to be what is showing through and what is behind. So it's okay for all of this darker thread to continue into the center. It's kind of like a little bit of a shadowing. Again, I'm going to move along the edge of the purple. I'm going to come up and color in a little bit here with the darker thread. Back down to the middle and back up. This is actually 2 petals peeking through. So I'm going to use some straight stitches up the center to make it look like 2 petals. Every little hump is considered a petal, and that's what you're trying to accentuate. Straight up the center, and I've now edge colored. Again, I'm going to now move along the purple, the dark purple, come back up just to catch this little piece. I'll go back down, I'll move along, I'll come back up, create 2 petals here, and I'll see you when we're at the end. So now we are done with our dark orange, and we're going to move on to the dark purple. So the dark purple again in my top thread and my bobbin, and I'm going to go all around the edge of the center. And this center I'm not going to quilt in the middle. We're going to leave this one to be puffy. So let's get started. We'll pull up our bobbin thread. We'll do our knotting stitches. Now wish me some luck, because where this camera is sitting, I'm praying I have good control around my purple edge. And I like to really get some thread a little deeper into the centers. I like the way it looks, especially if we're not going to go ahead and quilt the whole center. So now we have our finished flower. Our purple center is all finished, our light yellow, our little more of an orangey yellow thread, and this guy's all done. We're going to move on to a single flower that's done with the purple to show you how that's done. Okay. So we're ready to start another one of the small flowers, and this is a small single flower. I have my purple thread still in from my other flower, and it's purple top and as well as purple in the bobbin. So we're going to pull our bobbin thread up, we're going to do our knots, and then we're going to do the applique and the quilting all at once. And I'm going to show you how to create the definition of each petal. Again, each petal is just based on each little hump represents a petal. So let's get going. We're going to come around the top of this, and then we're going to go right down to the center, and that creates a petal. Again, back into the center, back up, back down into the center. And you really don't need to add a lot of thread. Certainly if you wanted to, you could make those lines thicker, but it's going to be enough to give you definition and let you see that there are individual petals in this flower. Here is our small single flower. All the purple thread work is now complete. We'll move on to the center, but you can see how all of your petals are very obvious with just those single straight lines of thread. This quilt is now ready for quilting, and all of the applique work is already done. You can see here the applique stitching has already been done on all of our pieces of this flower, and I will just be going in and doing the actual quilting and adding texture to the flower and definition for the petals. Now I'm going to do my small stitches to knot off the beginning of my thread, and now I'm ready to quilt. And as you'll watch me, you'll see that because all the applique work is done, all I'm going to be doing now is the actual quilting and adding all the definition. So we're going to start by making this a petal, and we'll add some definition from there. And you can add as much or as little as you're comfortable with. But because these are flowers, there's really no wrong or right about it. How much or how little you put is all going to be fine. I'm going to go back up here, and now I've created another petal. And these lines are really just being put in to add interest. Remember, this is the quilting we're doing and not the applique. I'm going to come all the way over to the end of this flower, put in this last petal, add a little definition, and now I'm just going to go around the general area of the outside of this flower, and that's just going to make it stand out a little bit more from the background. The applique work is already done, so I'm not appliquing. I'm just giving the flower definition. I'm going to come up and I'm going to create a petal. Give this flower a little line work. So this block is now finished with the quilting, and if you like a lot of quilting, which I do, I tend to add a lot of line work aside from the pieces that come in just to make my petals. If you're not sure about how you want your flower to look, then I just look at pictures of daisies to get an idea of how I wanted it to look. So I have my green thread on my top as well as my bobbin, doing my knotting off. And the background fill that I use for this quilt is, it's not the pebbles. I like it to look more like stones. To me, this quilt is nature inspired, so I wanted my fills to also be nature inspired. Just a note to the viewer, my cameraman is leaning on my machine. So I'm not trying to make perfect circles or pebbles here. I'm actually trying to make it look similar to what you might find in a stone wall. Now, because I don't like to stop and start, when I do background fill, I try and keep going. So I'm going to show you what I decided to do in this border treatment, which was just very thin straight lines, but no stitching in the ditch. You'll see how I just keep curving it at the end. And this is the fill for the whole border, the step border of the quilt. So I will not be quilting any of the colored squares on the border. I'm just trying to make all of the green work as one piece, and this way my colored squares are really going to show up. We have now shown you the two different ways a long arm quilter would need to approach a edge coloring applique quilt. The first example showed the blocks that were completely glued, but the applique work wasn't done. And the second block was done with all the edge coloring applique, and then all I had to do was the quilting. So they're the two examples you're going to see in the videos for anyone out there who has a long arm and is trying to decide which approach they would use for their edge coloring applique quilt. Thank you, and I hope it was helpful.